Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm really happy for this episode. If you guys have been watching my journey, I wanted to, of course, share what my healing journey looks like with us going through a miscarriage. If you have been following, um, we miscarried last year, and one of the things that I really wanted to do with this channel is obviously give voice and space so that more people can feel like they can talk about it when they want to, when they're ready to talk about it. But I'm really excited about this episode because it's time to hear the man speak. Okay, it's time to hear a man's perspective of like what it looks like on their end when they're watching their wives or watching their partners go through a miscarriage. And so I'm really excited that you're on this episode because I think this is so necessary. It's so needed. And I couldn't do this YouTube channel without having the man, the myth, the legend, my man come on this episode to, of course, give his perspective. So, yeah.
Thanks for having me, babe.
Yeah.
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
So, you guys want to know the male's perspective.
Yeah.
So, this having a miscarriage is difficult for both sides.
Mm-hmm.
As a man, what I went through was basically, I was lost. I was confused. Didn't know what to really do to help out in this situation.
Yeah.
Usually as a man, we always trying to figure things out, like how to have answers for and solutions for any problems.
Yeah.
But with this, it was just,
it
was no answer.
Yeah. You basically had to like figure it out
Exactly.
as we go. Mm-hmm. Honestly, like I thank God because we obviously didn't know. Like there's only so much we can do. But I thank God because even then, like we had a strong support system. We had our family.
Yeah.
First and foremost, we had God. Honestly, mm-hmm. Like even like in the previous episodes, I was talking about how like I wasn't talking to God when we came home from the hospital. But even having God be our anchor, that's a word for somebody. Honestly, the word anchor, like when they say like, oh, the Lord is your anchor. Yeah, this whole situation we went through, a whole new revelation of what that word really means. And like when you think about it conceptually, yes, makes sense. When you go through something, even with me not even speaking to God, he was literally my anchor. Mm-hmm. Crazy, but so needed. So I wanted to say something too. So if you've been watching this YouTube channel, thank you guys for the support. Thank you, thank you, thank you. On the first episode, I had someone who actually commented on the page, and she said something that it like struck something in me. She said like, wow, like you experienced a miscarriage in the honeymoon phase of your marriage. And she literally said like, that will either make or break your marriage. And that is 1,000% true. Because I do remember at some point last year, I don't remember who I was talking to, but I remember saying like, it will make or break your relationship. Like, truly, because
this really shook us. This really, this is really unexpected, and
it challenged our faith.
Shook things up.
Yeah, it challenged our faith in a way that was crazy. But she had said something. She was like, "Yeah, it makes or break your relationship," and something told me like, "Wait." Like it kind of made me think like, okay, what happens to relationships that break after a miscarriage? And I remember like doing some research on it, and there was a study from 2010, I believe, where 22% of couples, married or not married, were more likely to break up after a miscarriage.
Wow.
Yeah. And then for stillbirths, it like doubled. It was like,
Really?
yeah, like at least 40% of couples will break up
Sheesh.
after that. And it's crazy. And one of the things I thought was like, well, how, well, obviously you can imagine like, okay, like, yeah, but I guess you can see why that happens. But I guess I wanted to get a deeper understanding of like, oh my God, like, but what exactly is at play? I think one of the things that's at play is the woman is grieving one way. The father is grieving another way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the way we grieve looked so different that sometimes it can cause maybe even some tension in the relationship. Because like for some women, they like isolate themselves. They already feel so isolated. So it kind of plays out in their actions. Not that they really want to isolate themselves, but it just happens. And then like maybe them seeing like their husbands like grieve another way is also like sort of like telling, I think, a false narrative, which is like you're in this on you're on your own through this when you're really not.
Right.
Because yeah,
You kind of like feel disconnected from the person, especially if, with something so hurtful
yeah,
like that. You expect your partner to be, there for you.
yeah,
And when it happens between us both and we're grieving differently, it's like we feel like we're further apart from each other. So
Yeah.
you can kind of understand why people kind of like, okay,
yeah,
start like becoming more and more distant from
each other. Yeah,
when it should bring you guys closer because you guys are going through it the same.
yeah.
Going through the same thing.
You're going through the same thing, especially something as devastating as that.
Right.
One of the things that I remember with us going through the miscarriage, I remember there being a point in time where I was like, is he grieving? Do you remember this? I remember last year, I'm boohoo crying. I'm devastated. I like my grief is very visible. I'm not eating. I am screaming at times. I'm crying. I'm throwing things at times. I like you could see my grief. And what was crazy to me at the time, I know, but at the time, like he wasn't really showing his grief. I didn't see it. And so at one point in time, I remember thinking like, well, like, is he not as affected as me? Like, I'm really confused. Like, I don't see you crying. Like, I remember at the hospital you cried. I remember that. But once we got home and we were trying to like live, I remember feeling like, where's the grieving? Like, I'm really confused.
Yeah, for me personally, and I think it's with most men, how I grieve was to be distracted and like take on other things and like kind of like forget about what's really happened, forget about the hurt, because especially when I see your pain, I can't really show any pain on my end.
Okay.
That's what I was, and I was also told that too. Like I would speak to like family members or friends, and they would tell me like, you got to be strong, stay strong for your wife. So whenever I would see you hurt, I couldn't really. It hurt me that you were hurt even more, and I just wanted to be that your strength during that time.
Yeah. So then it didn't allow room for you to even show
how hurt that I was,
how you were feeling.
I were hurt.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
I get that. Yeah. And I can imagine like being a man, being a black man, let's be real. Like obviously in our like culture, right? In our society, like the black man, like you're strong, like you don't show emotion typically. I feel like that's shifting now, but old school mentality is like you're the man. Like if you show emotions, especially if you show like you're crying, like it shows like weakness in a sense. And I remember one day saying to you like, you don't have to be strong for me. Like I get it, but like you can show your grief. Like you can like talk to me, tell me how you're feeling, because it got to a point where I was just like, am I the only one here feeling this way? Because you were not sharing that. I wasn't seeing it. So it made me feel like really disconnected from you. And I remember thinking like, well, surely he's obviously affected. So, like, what's going on? Like, why aren't you sharing that with me? And of course, at that time, I couldn't really see it.
I feel like as men, we 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 don't show weakness, especially to our partners, because you guys need us to be strong for you.
Okay.
So if I was to, tell you like how I'm feeling and I'm hurt about this, I don't want to throw my pain on top of your pain and make you feel even more lower than you're already feeling.
Yeah, I can understand that logic, but I push back on that. Here's why. You sharing your sadness with me is not a weakness. And I think that's where things can get a little tricky. Because, like, I feel like for so long, like, men have been told to, like, don't cry, don't show emotion, like, suck it up. Like, if you fall, like, whatever, figure it out, walk it off, right? And so me asking you to, like, share with me how you're feeling, or, like, it's okay if you cry or whatever, I'm literally, like, threatening your very definition and basically your identity of what it means to be a man. So I feel like in that sense, that's why you were, like, holding everything down, and, like, you being the man, like, you're the covering of our home, you're the provider, you're the security, like, not only physical security, emotional security, spiritual security. So, like, for me to ask you to, like, please let me know if you're sad, or share with me if you're even thinking, like, let me know that, like, that's not weakness. Because
I get that now.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. I just wanted to make sure that you know that. Because I feel like that's where things can get a little tricky. I understand it. It's just you sharing that with me does not make you weak. And you're not adding your pain on top of my pain. Because if anything, like, I felt like that's what makes the marriage, like, when you go through something with your significant other and you guys are able to go get on the other side, because you guys leaned into each other and, like,
agree.
supported each other. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So we were doing therapy, and we got into this group therapy with other couples who experience miscarriages in different ways, whether it was an ectopic pregnancy or, like, stillbirth, or someone miscarrying, or you name it. There was never a session where we were not crying, but it was so needed, and we got so much support and so much healing from being able to talk to someone who's actually gone through it with us. Like,
I want to piggyback on that too. I think therapy is so huge. Like, I feel like out of those numbers that you mentioned with
go to
the
therapy.
divorce, how couples separated,
Yeah.
if they had that therapy session, they'll be able to understand the other side like how we did. Because if we didn't have this therapy session, I'm not saying that we would have got a divorce or anything, but
You think it would have added a lot more strain on our...
Because we were still trying to understand how we were both grieving, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Like, you still trying to figure out how I'm grieving.
I think you were trying to understand, like, how I was grieving too,
Yeah,
because even
it threw me off how you were grieving, and
Yeah.
I felt like I couldn't. That was another thing of being strong. I couldn't be weak because of how much I seen you hurt.
Yeah.
So it was just like,
yeah. So I remember
therapy is great. Therapy,
1,000%. So there was this one therapy session that we went to, and I remember this therapy session so vividly because of what happened. So the women went into their own separate thing, and the men went into their own separate thing. And the topic of that week was what our grief looks like and how different people grieve, especially the mother, how the mother grieves and how the father typically grieves. And I remember we were supposed to come back collectively and basically say, like, okay, like, hey, mothers, what did you talk about? And fathers, what did you talk about? So I remember the reoccurring theme when I was meeting with the girls was, I feel kind of disconnected from my husband. Like, he doesn't really show me how he's grieving. And I feel like there's a disconnect. Like, he doesn't really talk about it as much. Like, I feel like you see my grief, but I don't really see his. And then the men were like, who spoke, and I remember he spoke for them, and he was like, yeah, like we do grieve, but we feel like we can't because we have to hold it together for the family. Like we're literally covering and holding the weight of the world, especially our family. And so we're grieving, you just don't see it because we have to be strong for you. And I remember in that session, he opened up. And he opened up and he said, you know, last week I was driving and I saw a billboard and it was advertising something, but it had the name Gabriel, which is the name of our son. And I had to pull over and I just cried. And everyone was just like, oh my goodness, like, wow. I was happy that he opened up, but I was also a little upset because I felt hurt because I was like, this is what I'm talking about. Like, why aren't you sharing that with me? Because I remember I would ask you questions. I remember I'd be like, how are you feeling today? Like, what are you thinking about today? Like, how are you feeling about this whole process? Like, I would ask you specific questions about Gabriel, and it was very surface level. Mm-hmm. So when you shared that with them, I remember being like, this is what I'm talking about. And this is not like it happened today and we didn't get a chance to chat. Like, I remember you saying like, it was like a week ago, like last week. And I'm just like, these are the things that I need. Like, I want to hear that from you. That doesn't mean you're weak, you know? And if anything, now I'm able to like, obviously see what you're going through and be able to like rise up and like be your support too, you know?
I agree. Well, that's why I think therapy, because it gave me that platform,
that
outlet to be able to
yeah.
share that.
Mm-hmm.
And then moving forward, I was able to share that with you more often. So I feel like that kind of brought us closer and made us understand
it did
how the opposite sex grieved.
It did.
If that makes sense.
Yeah. It definitely did. Because I remember being like, this is what I've been looking for. I do wish you share that with me first before you gave it to the group. But I am grateful that you felt safe enough to even say that, you know? Because, like,
yeah,
I know that when it comes to stuff like that, like, especially historically, like, you were like, I'm going to keep this to myself because I need to, like, be strong for my wife. But to see you be able to have that space to do it. And I think that's one of the things that I was trying to like tell you too, which is like, yes, I'm falling apart, but I don't want you to feel like you can't fall apart either. You know, like.
And my thought at the time is like, if you're falling apart, yeah. I can't fall apart.
Yeah,
somebody
I get it.
Gotta hold it together.
Somebody gotta hold it together, which I understand. I do. It's just I was afraid that if we continued that, at some point, it was going to get too heavy for you and you would have fell apart. And I just wanted you to have that avenue where you'd be able to like freely give that without you just, sort of suppressing it until something happens. And then like, obviously there needs to be a release. Or I just didn't want you to carry that burden by yourself. I think that's what it was for me, because I know you were in pain too.
Yeah.
I know you were in pain too. Yeah.
That's why I keep bigging up that therapy group, because we was not alone. Like, I wasn't alone. Yeah. It was just so many people, unfortunately, that was going through the same thing. Yeah. But we were able to, relate to each other and, express how we feel truly.
Yeah.
And know that the other person understands it.
Understands where we're coming from. Yeah.
So it's just
1,000%. Guys, oh my gosh. So we had a great support system, our family. Let me tell you, the Dieubons, 10 toes down, okay? 10 toes down. I had my family, obviously.
Of course.
Our friends. Oh my goodness, our friends. Yeah, I'm just so grateful to God, because that obviously was the darkest period, I think, of our entire lives. At least for me, it was the darkest period.
Yeah.
Ever. But God still has a plan for us. This is not the end.
No.
It's not the end. Yeah. So I wanted for us to end with questions, like questions that we could ask each other, especially like in retrospect. Now that we're like a little over a year from everything, like I think it's really good to like reflect and like have like those moments of introspection where you're like, let me look back at some stuff. So, are you gonna ask me first, or?
I have a few questions for you.
Okay.
And these questions will, hopefully help your YouTubers, your fellow viewers, the people that, you made this channel for.
Okay.
I also want to know your thoughts on it. But
yeah, don't look at my questions.
Maybe you should go first.
I should go first?
You know what? I'll go first.
Okay.
Okay, so one of the questions I have for you is what are some coping skills you would recommend to someone going through a loss of a child?
Man. God. You need something bigger than you to like walk you through this thing, because this really shook my faith. I know it shook our faith, but it really showed me what I was actually made of. Like it showed me like all the years that I love God and God is faithful, and I'm 10 toes down for God. It really showed me what my faith was made of. It really did. Like, like, is God still good when you go through a miscarriage? Like, I remember having those conversations with God. Like, are you still good? I don't think you're still good. And I had those like real conversations with him where I was just like, yeah, your word says you're good, but it's really difficult for me to think you're good because this happened. Because if you're good, why did you let it happen? But of course, God walked me through a journey where my perspective was a little skewed, and he was just like, let's shift it a little bit, because you're asking the question with the assumption that I'm not good, which is obviously not true, because he really is good. Mm-hmm. The main thing I would say is God. I don't know how I would have gotten through this without him, honestly. After God, definitely you need family and friends. Like, I was really vulnerable and honest with you guys in the last episode that for a while I wasn't speaking to God. And so, yeah, like, for someone who's probably going through this, or even someone who's not a believer, like, how are they able to get through this? I had a great family system. We had a great family system that held us down, like whether it was like sending us food, whether it was like coming to visit us, whether it was just like, hey, how you doing? Or literally, I remember my girlfriends coming over, Clitney, Stacy, Jenny, love you guys. I remember they came over and one day they just sat with me in silence, because that's all I had. I didn't have anything else. So I would say definitely God, family, friends, your support system. And the last thing I remember, which was, it's not very spiritual, guys, but I remember we watched The Office. I don't know where this even came from. I really believe it came from God, honestly, because I remember there being a day where I was kind of like sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I remember just being like, okay, I need like an escape. I can't do it anymore. Like, this is all I think about. Obviously, I'm going to think about it every single day. But I remember just being like, I need relief. Like, I need something. And randomly, The Office popped up on my TV. And I was like, babe, we're watching The Office. Played the first episode. And it was the first time that we had laughed in a really long time. And it was this dumb, stupid show, but it really, really helped. Having those moments of like, let me just laugh, that little like healthy escape I would say is a third thing I would recommend. So yeah. God, family, friends, and just having those moments of like joy. For someone else, it could be taking walks. For someone else, it could be painting. For somebody else, it can be, I don't know, what's another thing? I don't know.
So family and friends, that comes into like, I would say you can include therapy in there as well. Because therapy is...
There we go.
Is major.
I forgot about the therapy, guys.
It's
but
major.
Yes, definitely. You're right. Yeah. We could not have done that without the therapy group. Like, that really made a big difference. Did you feel like you got enough support from me?
Yes. No,
okay.
For real, I did get a lot of support from you. You were, at the time you were in a different space, so the way you supported me, I felt like you did the best you could. So I did appreciate you. You know, you were always checking in on me, asking me how I was doing, like where my head is at. You was asking me these questions, even when you were really hurt, going through that pain.
Yeah.
You were still trying to check in on me, so you did support me.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you for that. Love you, baby.
Love you, baby. Okay.
So it's my turn. That was the question.
Okay.
Think you slick. Okay.
Okay. Go ahead.
All right. So, how has this loss impacted the way you see the world?
Okay, you went deep with the questions. Yeah, it changed everything. It changed everything. Like, good job with these questions.
Thank you.
A super important question too. It has shifted everything. Like, the main thing is it changes everything. Because honestly, like I had mentioned before, me getting through this season with the miscarriage, all glory to God. It really was him, because I realized that I had a lot of stuff in me that honestly needed to be let go. Like, I had like incorrect perspectives. Like, there were some things that I knew, like I viewed God in the wrong light. And him walking me through the miscarriage, like, it was definitely, I have a fuller revelation of who he actually is. And out of that, I see everything differently. Like, everything differently. Like, even with us grieving, I grieve with hope. We grieve with hope because we know we're going to see our kid again.
Right.
We are going to see him again. Like, nothing's lost. Yeah, it's changed everything. Like, God, like, really did a lot of healing work on me, spiritually, especially, emotionally. And out of that, I see the world differently. Like, I have more hope.
That's
I have
great.
more love. Like, it had definitely put a different perspective for me, like, in clarity. And like, yeah, I just have a lot more hope now.
That's what's up.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So on you.
Oh, okay. Okay. So, my turn. Looking back, what would you tell yourself? Like, G, like you now talking to G a year ago. What would you tell him?
This G now will tell the G that was going through that miscarriage with his wife to, yes, it's okay to be strong for your wife, but you can also show your grief and relate to her because you guys are going through this together. And I feel like being able to do that would have brought us a lot closer, quicker. Even though we
got it together.
We got it together, you know.
Yeah.
We end up figuring it out.
Yeah.
Thank God. But and I would tell myself it's okay to, you know, express how I feel. Like, it's okay to cry, especially with your partner. 'Cause it's okay to talk about, you know, Gabriel. It's okay to do these different things. It's okay. It's like, and not try to, mask how I was feeling.
Mask. How you feeling? That's good, babe. That's really good.
Yeah.
So I kind of like to pivot off of that. Do you feel like you allowed yourself enough grace and support, like for you to receive it? Because if you're like holding everything together, like, do you think you at in any point like maybe didn't like reach out more for support? Do you know what I mean? Like,
see, that's the crazy thing right there, is because that's another thing. I feel like as men, we don't get as much support. We don't get as much support for miscarriages and especially for things like that. Like,
okay.
I feel like it falls on the mother more so than the father.
I see what you mean.
And it's not like I'm, on me on my end, I'm not gonna lie. It's not like I was reaching out to people like, "Hey, help me."
Yeah.
Because as a man, like,
yeah,
we don't ask for handouts or like we feel like we can hold it down basically, but men don't usually get as much support.
I get what you mean though, because typically, like for the woman, like, okay, you carried the child, right? Like all these things, like you were the primary person to carry the child and all these things, and so you're gonna feel it on a level that is just like, whew.
The bond is different. I get.
And not only that, like I just feel like the bond is different, but it doesn't diminish your bond in any way.
I agree.
You know what I mean? Like at all. But yeah, like that's interesting because I oftentimes thought about that. Like, did you feel like you got enough support? Like, that's why did you feel like you got support from me? Did you feel like I know our family, our friends obviously held it down for us and like they did support us. So that's not to diminish that in any way.
Right.
I get what you're saying though, in the sense that you don't oftentimes, like the man doesn't get as much support as like perhaps the woman. And I can see that. I don't think that's anything that we don't see either. Okay.
Yeah.
I want to give you a hug.
Thanks, babe.
Okay.
All right, so my last question I have for you, since this is like the man's point of view,
Okay.
what could I have done differently to help with our healing process? What could I have done?
Ooh. I feel like we kind of went over it. Like the only thing I felt like I needed from you earlier on, but I remember like we got help like through therapy and like even us having the conversations, like you can talk to me, like you don't have to go through this alone. I think that's the only thing, but like I wouldn't even count that because you implemented it. So I don't think I would tell you to do anything differently looking back. I guess for me looking back, there's only so much you can do, right? Because in that, we did the best we could with what we had. But no, I don't think there's anything I would have asked you to do differently. I feel like we covered that already in that season, and you shifted, which was like you shared your grief with me. Like it didn't look like mine, and that didn't mean your grief wasn't important. Like grief is the tax you pay on the person you love, right? Your grief, I realized like you having to hold it in together for me, but then like you having these moments where when you're like going to bed at night or like when you're in the shower, like those moments of quiet time is when you would have those moments where you would cry or have those moments where you saw something that reminded you of Gabriel or things like that. Like, yeah, you shared it with me, so I wouldn't tell you to do anything different.
Yeah. So I wanted to emphasize that, in case if any guys was watching, please share with your partner because it's very important. You guys are going through this together.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are just unaware as to how to go about that.
Yeah, which I get.
It's okay to share, with, especially with your partner, because
it's needed.
Right.
Hey, we're twins. You said what I said, Viva. Okay, guys, that concludes our episode. Yeah, awesome. This was fun. We should do more episodes together. What do you guys think? Should he be on more episodes? I want to hear your thoughts, comments below. Please like and subscribe if this blessed you. Like, please share it with anyone you know, especially someone who's going through this. But the journey continues, guys. I'm going to drop another episode, same time next week. The next episode I'm really excited about. I'm going to talk about, like, the actual healing when I finally got to the place of, like, okay, God, I'm ready. Let's go. So I'm looking forward to sharing that with you guys. I love you guys so much. Thank you for watching, and see you soon. Bye.
Peace.